Welcome back to the PI show. We've been discussing the interesting case of David Jones and the relevance of harassment, sexual harassment, just harassment in general in the workplace, bullying and those sorts of acts. This is a very interesting topic because it talks about all workplaces and not just the David Jones case, and the importance of looking after your employees and management's dealing, how they handle these matters when they arise.
That's right.
So it's a very significant topic, Harry. And
It is. And look, one part of this whole pleading is what knowledge did David Jones have prior to her complaints about Mark McGuinness's behaviour.
And what actions they took,
and
Harry.
what actions they took.
I mean, from the pleadings, and apologies for interrupting there, but from the pleadings, it doesn't actually come across that formal steps were taken through human HR from the HR channels either. So whilst some of Miss Kirk's direct supervisors were made aware of the situation, it didn't actually have the formal channels to go through in how to deal with the harassment.
Well,
That makes me question things about how the organisation is run and what processes and procedures they have in
just
play.
on that point, one of the things she alleges in her pleadings is also all these previous victims. That she says there's 4 other victims,
That's right.
albeit it doesn't appear that there's any clear evidence or anything in those pleadings that show that you can prove those 4 people were victims, Harry?
No, look, I think one thing which strikes me is that David Jones didn't know of 3 of the aspects, and 1 they did. I think she says in her pleadings that the board was first made aware of the other victims on the 10th of June, and he resigned on the 18th.
Well, how come David Jones didn't know, Harry and Kathy, and how did she know? That raises,
right.
you know, you had your suspicions
right.
at the start of the show about
Evidence that she was gathering.
well, whether basically she's also
gathering evidence.
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes you initiate things without realising you've initiated. How do we know that she hasn't actually given rise to him?
Does she need
doing
these previous victims to be successful in this claim?
She doesn't on
Probably
her
not.
claim. She pleads it partly in terms of punitive damages because she says that David Jones knew or should have known of of McGuinness's behaviour over a period of time, and that they put her in a position of risk, if you like.
But they're not parties to this. At the end of the day, they would only enhance her claim. It wouldn't actually have any detrimental effect to what she's raising.
Kathy, seeing that you've got suspicions about the whole thing of significance, and Harry told me this the other day, her background's been investigated.
Yeah, there's a private investigator
Yes.
looking at her background.
And
What do we know so far, Harry? What have they
We've
discovered?
learned a lot from that already.
According to the press, she's made one previous allegedly frivolous complaint at a previous employer.
Of a similar nature? Was it
I don't
sexual harassment?
think so.
or-
That doesn't suggest that, but it says a frivolous complaint.
So
No,
could it be a
that's the
setup?
allegation.
Could it be a setup? Is a question.
Well, that's
that-
what you've been saying from the
one
start.
allegation
I
is...
have been saying that because I think sometimes you have to, one always has to look at themselves as well to be in such a situation. I'm not saying that this is the case. I mean, I'm very much looking forward to reading the defence of David Jones and of
Mark
Mr.
McGuinness,
McInnes in
yeah.
particular. I would like to see how he will defend this. The other witnesses, did they have, has he harassed them as well? Because
But
if so,
of
they
si-
should be raising their own claim.
Of significance, he's the CEO, and people do feel intimidated towards the big boss, if I can put it that way.
That's
and
right,
making-
but if his
making formal
behaviour, if
complaints.
he is doing this though, and this is common behaviour to him, then it's absolutely wrong, and he should not be CEO, and he should not be holding that position. It is a breach of duty.
Look, I think I think he resigned and admitted inappropriate behaviour in other contexts, but he might say in relation to her he didn't do anything wrong or mightn't have done. But I think he did admit that he made some inappropriate...
Well, Harry, my question is as well. Whilst he may have admitted that, and
for other people,
whilst we know
not-
even through the particulars that there's been text messages, correspondence via emails and voicemails, we don't know what Miss Kirk has answered and replied. Whether maybe she's actually defended herself and said, I don't want anything going forward with this, or I don't want to,
I'm just
basically
curious,
saying no.
who brought the media into the picture? Was it her or David Jones? Who introduced the media?
Oh, no, there was a press conference, I think, on the 18th.
By-
when he
by
resigned,
David Jones.
When he resigned, they made a statement
But
to
again,
the press.
it raises the question. So a press statement is made on behalf of an organisation where an alleged harassment has been complained about, and yet the formal channels of the process on how it should be handled have not been adhered
Kathy,
to.
can I say this? I'm sure Harry will enlighten us on this, but with a publicly listed company, something of that significance has to go to air, doesn't it, Harry?
It
Yeah,
does,
they've got
you
continuous
can't-
disclosure
yeah.
rules.
No,
You've got
of course it
disclosure.
does,
You can't-
and that's right.
You lose your CEO, that's of significance to the marketplace.
Of course, Tony, and that's without a doubt. But what I'm saying is, it's the fact that you are going to the public, that you haven't actually shown you've done everything in its correct way to get there. So
Yeah,
it's
well, I
interesting in
think
how they've dealt with that. Is my point.
Well, I think employers out there would be very wary about their practices these days for the simple fact that,
That's
in the
right.
workplace, a lot of this sort of goes on, doesn't it, Harry? It can go on.
The harassment
It
and
can.
bullying, we come across a lot of cases
Yeah,
of
we do a lot
harassment
of
and
that.
bullying in our...
I mean, what constitutes
our
harassment as well is something that has to be
yeah.
There's
be
still-
looked at.
Look, the evidence has got to come out and we've still got to get his defence. I mean, at this early
At this early
stage, what do
stage.
you reckon, Harry? Is she going to get some money or what? Is she
Oh,
gonna get...
look, most cases, in our experience, settle out of court for some sort of amount. The punitive damages seems to me a very odd pleading, but it's in there, and that's attracted enormous headlines around Australia. And it's been a talking point, Tony. $37 million. The worst case of a paraplegic with brain damage doesn't attract that
No,
sort of
no.
money. And in effect, she's claiming, the way I read the pleadings, a 23rd, a Sunday lunch in Balmain, and something untoward happened.
Well, Harry, how important is it for Mark McGuinness to run a case to try and get vindicated in terms of his future career in, as a CEO of some description? Or was he better off to just settle it out of court?
Look, there's Mark McGuinness and the board of directors.
Yes.
So there's two groups, if you like.
Okay.
And
So they've got
they
competing interests, I guess, to some
Probably be
extent.
separately represented.
Okay. No, I would have thought they would have been.
Yeah.
There'd be a conflict of interest of some description.
Well,
there,
that's
wouldn't there?
right, especially
Yes,
in this case,
yes.
unless it's run together and then they end up suing, the company ends up suing Ross McInnes for damages. I mean, but I doubt it.
But look, I think that they're separately represented.
Harry, you know
that-
punitive damages. Do you recall that case in America, the Ford case, where what was the punishment? What would they get for punitive
it's
damages?
hundreds of millions of dollars.
350 million, I think it
yes, to discourage the Ford Motor Company from taking shortcuts.
Okay.
That was the basis of the punitive damages.
But
Anyway,
remember,
there's a
she's
lesson in
got to
all it.
prove the punitive damages. I mean, it's a very hefty sum that she's claiming for, and she has to prove that she's warranted that.
no court-
claim
This is,
we
this
wouldn't
is a
think-
lesson of management and employers
Yes.
in how you deal with bullying, harassment of whatever description.
What it comes down to, Tony, is that harassment and bullying should not be permitted it's not condoned.
Well, there's
in
got
the
to be proper
workplace.
process in dealing with it,
That's
not that right?
Absolutely.
It's coming towards the end of the show.
Yeah, well, that's all
Harry.
we got time for. This case has taken a long time. We're probably going to come back to it in the future once we see the other
Well, his
parts
defence
of the
and
pleadings, yeah.
That's right.
yeah, whatever.
And
I-
how
We'll
it's-
continue and keep you informed,
how it
viewers.
runs,
That's right. And
yeah.
and also before we go, we apologise for not bringing to you the mailbag this week, but we will be back with the mailbag next week, and we want you to keep writing in to the www.pishow.com because I want to be here to read your questions. Thank you very much.
It's been very entertaining. I've enjoyed your perspective.
Thank
As a
you.
female, I thought you would have taken sides with her, but you haven't, Kathy.
No, thanks, Kathy. No,
Yeah,
there's
it's
no
been very
sides.
entertaining.
It's just
I'm
No,
thinking
no,
from
I
as a
want-
lawyer,
yeah.
Tony, as a lawyer.
This male's been politically correct, but
No,
you've really,
no,
really,
no.
had a crack at it. But that's very interesting. Viewers, keep watching. We'll be back next week. Thank you.
thanks.